liked that you what are multisensory things that you've done in a presentation that now you realize, oh, that's why it worked. I'm going to do more of that. Or based on everything we've already talked about, maybe you're thinking differently about your very next presentation. We'd love to hear from some of you. Observations, comments, but specifically on multisensory, kind of bringing ideas to life. How could we do that? There's always so many different ways of doing it. I learn something new all the time. I see. Is it, how do I pronounce your first name? Chio?
Chioma, yeah.
It's Chioma. Chioma.
Chioma, yeah.
Yeah, Chioma, let's start with you. What do you have for us?
So I have actually two, not three. Sorry.
That's okay.
I think my favorite presentation that I have done was something that was examining the entertainment landscape. And so as a result, um, I my presentation had graphs, it had GIFs, it had things to make people react to.
Okay.
But it was fun because the topic was entertainment, right? So I could be a little fun with it. My current role is a little bit more dry. Um, and I have been asked to not be as entertaining.
Mm.
And so as a result, I tend to use like a kind of like divide my presentation into words, and then maybe I'll have a picture, but nothing movement because the feedback that I have gotten is that that removes the importance of the topic that I'm talking about. So
Interesting. Okay.
so yeah, those are the two, but my favorite was that entertainment one that I
But
said to put.
you're listening to your audience. You're making it relevant to your audience. But even when you're talking about a topic that may not lend itself to as much of the animated presentation, there are definitely ways of making words and text come alive.
Mm,
And even though, let's not call it entertaining, but compelling and interesting, and you're going to learn about that today. So I will be curious to hear from you later to see
okay.
if maybe some of the things we talk about today, especially when it comes to data. Chioma, you have data in your
And
A
presentation?
little bit.
metaphor and metaphor.
Yeah.
Metaphorical
So,
language can paint a picture, can create something that seems visual or that you can picture in your brain.
Mm,
yeah,
hmm.
we're going to talk about all that today. So we'll try not to use the word entertainment, but it's
Okay.
still going to be entertaining. They just won't know it. It'll be compelling to them. They're not
Okay.
even sure. Audiences, sometimes they're not even sure why they like it, but they like it. And today we're going to get into some of the reasons why.
So it looks like we have Sonia and then Jim, Nancy, Shahina. So let's start with Sonia
Okay,
and then we'll
Sonia.
go to our others.
Okay, so this got me thinking. So this is how I'm going to be changing a component of a presentation that I do. And
Great.
it's going to go like this. Instead of just talking about it, healthy and convenient do not have to be mutually exclusive. Here's a delicious way to get your veggies, healthy fats, and fiber on the go.
Okay. Oh, demo. I love it.
Grab and go healthy food.
So you're showing it. It's kind of like it's show and tell, what we used to do in grade school. And that's what you're doing. Yeah. But Sonia, before, why wouldn't you show it before? Or was it just on a slide?
It was on a slide.
Okay.
I didn't
Yeah.
think of demonstrating it until you said it last week or
I
a
We
do
couple
don't.
days ago.
Ah, yeah.
I do like the demo because it's fast. It didn't take that long.
Yeah, and people can see it fits in a cup holder. It comes with the package. The blender comes with the package that they're going to get, which we talk about. So then I can just show, like, here's how easy it is. Rather than grabbing that gas station food or going through a drive-through, you can do this and be good to your body.
See,
It's
this is
good.
a really good. This is a good lesson, even for me. See how tied we are to the slides, because in hindsight, that seems obvious, Sonia. And yet it's not obvious because we're so tied to, oh, but we have slides, so we have to show the slides. Not necessarily. So think of presenting more on that holistic level. It's not just about the slides. It's also about how you come across and how we're taking this idea and making it jump off the page. So it's a good reminder. Excellent. Great.
Great. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing. Let's have Jim.
All right, so I had three. I'll make it quick. The first is the use of compelling graphics. So instead of the same old bar charts, pie charts, I played around a little bit with some AI image generators over the weekend, and I thought that was it was a really cool tool to kind of spice up the drab old bar charts. Number two was around the thoughtful, intentional use of modulating my voice. Carmine, you do this throughout the presentation and discussion to emphasize points. I think the thoughtful, intentional piece are the things I really need to land on, right, when I practice. And then the final for us, we use a tool called Slido, which uses QR codes for interactive polling during presentations. So I've seen others use that. And I thought that was kind of a cool way to get people involved. So those are my three.
Yeah, I
Excellent.
like that. I've
Okay.
seen others do the QR codes. You know who does that, Carmine? We work with Constellation. They own Modelo, Corona, Pacifico, Spirits, Wine. A
Yeah.
lot of their salespeople use those QR codes when they're working one-on-one in presentations, and they have found those to be very successful. I like what you said about voice, Jim.
Mm.
And
Mm.
what I'm going to talk about on Wednesday is how messaging is directly connected to how you use your voice. And so I like the idea that you said thoughtful use of voice, and I will share with you how that will come alive as you develop your messaging and invest in practice. And we'll talk more about that on Wednesday, but I'm glad you brought that up.
Perfect. Thank you.
Shahina, and I think, didn't we have Nancy? Are you
Oh.
still wanting to share?
Yes, sorry.
Let's do Nancy and then we'll do Shahina.
Okay,
Sure.
and Nancy, one more thing, just right before we get to you. Jim, the AI graphics, I'm curious about because I've seen them done well. I've seen them done really poorly. There's a lot of different tools out there. So maybe in the chat, you could either drop maybe you can show us an image or tell us where you went and how satisfied you were with that particular tool. Maybe you could do
Absolutely.
that in chat. Yeah. Okay, great. Nancy.
So I work in a hospital in the real estate department, and space planning is one of the realms of responsibility. And we had a 5-year project, a campus redesign project that we were presenting on with architects and engineers, and they had their graphs and their phasing diagrams, and it was, long and tedious. And I decided to take a different approach to my piece of the presentation, which was to actually capitalize on we were taking still photos. And so we did a time lapse video, and people loved that because they actually got to see and feel the duration and the complexity of the project in a 90-second video. I mean, you could see the seasons through the video. And it got a lot of, I think people understood then after seeing that, that it was, yes, it was complex, and we were able to leverage that to talk about operational challenges too.
Oh boy, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. So maybe on either through email, I would love to see a link. I'd love to see how that 90-second piece turned out.
Sure.
Because in my opinion, even without being there, I bet that's what people remembered because it's different. So out of the whole presentation, it's 90 seconds that people remembered. And it's because Nancy took that extra time to be creative and to just do a video that brought everything into context. And the time-lapse video, see, that's an interesting concept. I haven't used one personally because I'm not into, isn't that relevant for me, but I could totally see where showing something, a building or a project from beginning to end, that would make sense. And I don't know how long ago that was, but from what I understand, some of the online tools now and some of the editing tools make the time-lapse video even easier to do than before. So if you want to do that and you're not quite sure of the technical aspect, there's a million videos on YouTube that'll show you how to do it. So that's not too complicated anymore, but a great idea that very few people are using.
You know what that reminds me of, Carmine? You work with Toshiba Medical Systems when they released an MRI machine.
Uh-huh.
Quill one at a press, it was a press conference, and they showed a hypothetical case. His name was David, and he had a heart attack, and they demonstrated how quickly on the clock from the point of assessment with the new Aquilian 1 MRI machine to diagnosis of where the cause was, they could show on the clock that it within like 24 hours versus using older methods, it was up to like 3 days. So they used a clock to demonstrate the power of how quickly you could get to an accurate assessment based on this new technology. But that kind of reminded me of that.
And you know what, Vanessa, that reminds me, that animation, and we're talking about something people aren't seeing right now, so I'll just make this short, but they had, this was years ago, so they had to pay an outside firm a lot of money to do a basic animation. That animation today would be incredibly simple to do with any.
It's completely democratized. The fact that all of you are using AI tools is incredible because you don't need to, if you're not as creative as you'd like to be, you don't have to be. Let's use the tools. Let's go to Shahina. You have your hands up. Thank you for being patient. We love all these ideas that you're sharing.
I think my favorite presentation of the year is something we do called intern retreat. So it's at the end of the first year, whenever first residents finish their first year. So first thing we do is something along the lines of what Nancy mentioned. We have a video of their 1 year lapse kind of play for 60 seconds in the background that shows when they started with us as interns. Then on the floor moments or some tough things and key highlights. So that plays kind of in the first 60 months, and all the interns are kind of like this because they're trying to find themselves in the picture, and it reminds some fun times, tough times, and all that. And then the second thing I do is during my opening session, I actually show them a video. It's called Empathy Connection, Human Connection to Patient Care. It's a video by Cleveland Clinic, which kind of over against 2 minutes or 3 minutes shows, if you could hear what they hear, meaning patients, if you could see what they see, would you treat them differently? That kind of is a message that, gives them in a package what I am trying to spend the day doing, what we are going to focus on, the empathy connection of the patient care. And then in the third thing I do is I ask them their favorite moments from the year. What was their favorite patient encounter that they cherished most? And again, so then they give their input and they kind of, are very proud of their stories they tell. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
I like that. The video is powerful.
I wrote a book called The Storyteller's Secret that was all just about business storytelling. And I interviewed somebody from Cleveland Clinic, and they pointed me to that video. That I know exactly the video that you're talking about. It was very powerful, and it was on YouTube, and it ended up it's got millions of views. But Cleveland Clinic is an organization that is really focused on patient provider communication. There's a whole book on Shahina. Did you read the book there's a book by the Cleveland Clinic, and it's all on communication.
I don't think I have read that, but I'll look up.
Yeah, I'll send that to you.
But this video, every time I watch it, and it may be 10 years, every time I cry.
Isn't that interesting?
It is so powerful.
One video. It's okay to have a little video in your presentation because a lot of people don't do that.
Carmine, let's get Zach really quick. Let's get Zach really quick. And then we'll move on.
What do you have for us?
Thanks, Carmine. I was just going to say, sometimes I get brought into business development type situations where we're making a pitch to a large client that, may have 50 or $100 million to invest or something like that. And, the advisor or the team has probably presented a lot of technical information, charts and graphs and numbers. And sort of one of the most effective things that I've done is just draw a picture. A lot of times I'll just back up and say, you know, I use this metaphor as a portfolio, sort of like a bag of bread. And so I'll just draw a bag of bread, you know, like a bag of Wonder Bread on a chart, and explain the concept of time diversification, that, you know, some investments are meant to be used like the first two pieces of bread in the bag. And then some are long-term investments that we won't touch for many, many years. That's deep in the bag of bread. And just drawing that simple drawing, and I'm not a great artist, but it typically comes sometime in that interaction where they've already seen a ton of charts and graphs and fancy stuff, and there's something that's sort of magical about the simplicity of a drawing. When you've been kind of like inoculated to like all of these fancy things, the low tech drawing seems to be one of the most impactful things that I've done. I just keep doing it. Yeah.
I could
That's
tell you,
great.
I could tell you why that's working. So first of all, hold on to that idea, because we're going to talk about metaphor today. Perfect. Great segue. But hold on to that idea as well, because I think it works because it's breaking a pattern, Zach. They're seeing the same things from different presentations and different slides. Then Zach comes up and draws a bread and starts talking about that as a metaphor. What that is doing, folks, is it's breaking the pattern. And so it catches your attention. Basic, again, going back to John Medina, ancient brain psychology, breaking the pattern. Okay, hold on to that thought, Zach. We're going to come back to you on metaphor. I love it. Okay, let's move on for today. This is a segue. Again, on page 22, we're going to talk about bringing data to life, but I'm going to use this example as a segue to go from multimedia or multisensory to data. Steve Jobs was still widely considered the greatest business storyteller of our time. And he didn't just give you a power or a slide and put data on the slide. He would do that because he had to. The products are very technical. So he would do what was expected, and then he would break a pattern and do something either multisensory or something that grabbed your attention. So here's an example where he starts with the data behind a particular product. In this case, it's a computer, the MacBook Air. But then he does something that is ultimately the most memorable part of the presentation. Let's watch this clip.
Now, I want to point something out here. The thickest part of the MacBook Air is still thinner than the thinnest part of the TZ series. Okay? We're talking thin here. So, it's so thin, it even fits inside one of these envelopes that we've all seen floating around the office. And so let me go ahead and show it to you now. This is it. Let me take it out here. This is the new MacBook Air, and you can get a feel for how thin it is.
Okay, I love that. That's genius. And ever since that presentation years ago, that had to be more than a decade ago, I've tried to look up older articles from that presentation, and guess what? I cannot find any picture other than him taking the MacBook out of the envelope, because that's the most memorable part of the presentation. So the lesson is focus on what you want people to remember. Build that out. And if there's a data point, if there's specific data that you want people to remember, you can make it memorable by highlighting it, focusing on it, and bringing it to life. And that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to start with an exercise. I am going to show you a slide. And this is a real slide from a technology company in Silicon Valley that Vanessa and I worked with. I eliminated any reference to the company, but we were asked to help a senior executive deliver a presentation to financial analysts. So Zach, you'd appreciate this. I'm going to show you this slide. I'm only going to bring it up for 5 seconds because that is the average of what a billboard slide would look like. If you were on a highway, you saw a billboard, you got 5 seconds to read it. I think that's a good exercise. In 5 seconds, tell me what is the most important number on this slide. Ready? Well, what do you think? What's the one thing that you should remember from that particular slide?
Someone said
What?
52% in the chat. I think it was
Oh,
Chioma.
you saw, oh yeah, 52% year over year
I could
growth.
see that because
Okay.
it's right in the middle and it was
Yep.
such quick. Someone said FY19. No idea. There's lots of numbers, too much.
Exactly. I think that's the right answer. I have no
Also
idea either
12%, Carmine, 12% year over
because
year.
that's first, sure. But is that really what they wanted to highlight? I don't know. I forget. There's too many numbers on this slide anyway. Here's the trick for creating a great presentation. You select one number that you want to highlight and you build a story out of it. Let me give you an example of how I learned this. I was working for a pre-IPO LinkedIn. Shows you how long ago this was. This is LinkedIn. Most of you are LinkedIn. Again, you can find me, Carmine Gallo, on LinkedIn. But this is when they only had 70 million members and they were adding 3 million every month. So I'm working with the marketing team, and they said, you know, Carmine, we're growing really well. We're adding 3 million people a month. And I said, okay. And well, what does that mean to me? This is social media. I don't know. Is that good? Is that bad? What is it? And then somebody in the meeting turned to me and turned to the rest of us and said, well, if you think about it, that's 3 times the number of people who live in San Francisco. We were in the city of San Francisco at the time. 3 times the number of people who live in the city coming to our becoming members of LinkedIn every month. And we all thought, well, that's an interesting way of putting it. Why don't we put that into the marketing presentation and see what happens? Okay, big learning for me, because what I found is that people in different parts of the country were customizing it to their region. So one person said that's 55 times the number of people who will fill Yankee Stadium on the East Coast. Or another person in New York said 140 times Madison Square Garden. So they were having fun with it. They were having a competition with each other. But it taught me something, because later we learned that that's what people remembered. Audiences seem to like that part. Well, we're still using the same number. It's 3 million members a month, but it's different. It's packaged in a way that's ultimately memorable. That's the secret. Focus on one data point and then build it out. Add context around it. Let me give you another example. Let's look at Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift by the numbers, everyone. I'm sure you've all heard of her record-breaking Eras tour. What's wrong with this slide? I created this slide based on the numbers that came out last week from the Taylor Swift tour. What's wrong with the slide? I think you all know by now. I think I'm being facetious because
Lots of numbers in the
too
chat.
many numbers, too many
Too many
numbers.
numbers.
Too many numbers. What do you want me to focus on? Okay. But isn't that what we all do? This is kind of what we do. Oh, there's so many cool numbers. Let's put them all on a slide. How about just picking one and saying something like, after 150 concerts, Taylor Swift's tour made a record-breaking $2 billion. That's double the ticket sales of any concert in tour history. In fact, the second closest one was Coldplay's world tour, and they made $945 million. So I can add a little embellishment to the slide, but that's the only thing you can see on the slide. Or I can say that her longest engagement was 8 nights at Wembley Stadium, where 750,000 people came out to see Taylor Swift. That's about the number of people who live in Seattle. What's more interesting to you? Oh, and by the way, I didn't make that up. That actually came from the New York Times, and it was widely circulated. What's more interesting to you? That, the way the last couple of slides, or my first infographic?
B.
Yeah. I'm not overwhelming you. I am selecting the right number, or a couple of numbers that I want to highlight. So good presentation skills is a matter of selecting, not compressing. That's a key message from today. Don't feel like you have to compress everything, all the information on one slide, because then that doesn't mean anything and it's ultimately not memorable.
And I
Select.
think it's like Zach said about the bread. Your audiences are used to seeing the same thing over and over and over and over. And then all of a sudden they're presented with something they haven't seen before, but it's the same information, but it's packaged differently. Aha, now I'm going to pay attention. The brain gets really bored.
Warren Buffett is widely considered one of the great financial communicators. Zach, I'm sure you probably know this. Edward, you know this. Great financial communicator, can simplify complex topics, especially big numbers. Last year, he decided that he had had enough of the criticism that his company or the wealthy don't pay enough in taxes. He's an advocate for making the tax system more equitable, but he had had enough of saying, well, we don't pay taxes. No, they certainly do. So it's a touchy subject, isn't it? So what did he do? Here's what he said in his annual conference last year. He said, first of all, that over the last decade, Berkshire Hathaway, his holding company, has paid $32 billion in taxes to the federal government. $32 billion. What does that mean? It's too big a number. He knows that. He said if you convert 32 billion into $100 bills, the stack would be 21 miles high, 3 times higher than commercial airlines cruise. He also had, I don't show it here, but he had a bunch of other things very similar to this, where he was trying to put 32 billion in perspective. Later, in an interview, I think it was on CNBC, he was asked, why did you do that? He said, because people think of millions and billions. Those are just words. They're impossible to comprehend. So I wanted to put a physical dimension to the numbers. See what he's doing? Physical dimension to the numbers, picking out one number, building a story out of it. Climate change. Oh, this is definitely one where it's interesting to watch how good reporters and communicators deal with these numbers, because nobody cares about how many tons of CO2 emissions we emit. It's too big a number. It just doesn't add up for most people. So earlier this year, I think this was in May, a report came out showing that analyzing extreme heat events over the previous year. And the headline that came out of it was human-caused climate change added an average of 26 days of extreme heat. In other words, we're experiencing 26 more days of extreme heat than we otherwise would have if it wasn't for global warming. What's interesting about that is look at all these headlines. Everyone went to the same headline. And it's because when I looked at the report, which is 50 pages plus of very, very dense material, the top finding was this: 26 days of extreme heat. So what this organization did, it's like the International Organization of Climate. What they did is they handed you the data point. They said, okay, we know this data is going to be way too complicated for people to comprehend. So why don't we focus on the one data point that we want them to share? Again, it's one data point that makes sense to most of us. It's relevant. Oh, it's about a month. Some people in one of these headlines, it's about a month. It wasn't even 26 days. But you see what they're doing. You see what they're doing. They're selecting one data point and making it relevant. So now we're going to do this ourselves. We are going to do an exercise, another group exercise. Turn to page 23. This is why you'll need the workbook. On page 23, I want you to do this yourself. Think about a number, or we're going to give you some numbers, and I want you to put this into context. Let's pretend that we are science communicators. We are health and science communicators, and we want to make people more aware of the products that they consume and what they put into their body. So let's assume we're going to break you into two groups. One of you is going to get a grande mocha frappuccino. Grande mocha frappuccino has 55 grams of sugar. Okay. Another group is going to get, or some other groups are going to get an average slice of pepperoni. It's got 700 milligrams of sodium. So we're talking about, the two worst things that health communicators always talk about, sugar and sodium. What I want you to do is put that number into context. If you were writing this and you wanted to make me, Carmine Gallo, more aware of the Frappuccino and the pepperoni, both of which I love and both of which I consume regularly, how would you make me more aware of it? Because 55 grams of sugar, grams, that doesn't sound like a lot. It's less than pounds, isn't it? It's less than ounces, grams. 55 grams, it's nothing. Or is it? I don't know. It's up to the groups. Put it into context. How would you write this? But just we're going to use either 55 grams of sugar or 700 milligrams of sodium. Doesn't have to be mathematically that accurate either. What would the concept be? How would you put that in perspective?
Can I chime in?
Yes, and then we will divide people into groups.
So in your groups, the odd groups, 1, 3, and 5, you're going to do the pizza. And the even groups, 2 and 4, you're going to focus on the Frappuccino with the sugar. That way, you know which one you're going to do when you get in your groups. And I wanted to mention as a reminder before we go into the groups, if you haven't had a chance to sign up for the one-on-one with Carmine and I, you can do that. It's on your site for your class, the link to our Google Doc. We created all the specific times we put in there work with our calendar. They're in Pacific time. I'm assuming we can see that link in the chat soon as well. So if you are interested, there are plenty of slots to choose from between now and in early January. And the reason why I want to remind you of that is because some of the things that we're doing now, repackaging information, you can show us a deck, you can show us an outline, and we can give you ideas of how to make the messaging more creative, just wanting to plant that seed in your brain. So let's go into our groups now.
Should we remind people again, Vanessa? So you're saying groups 1, 3, and 5 are going to take
Pizza.
pepperoni pizza.
And the
then
even groups 2 and 4 are going to take the sugar, the Starbucks.
Yes, thank you so much. And those instructions are in the chat as well. So they'll carry over to your breakout groups. Very excited. You'll have about 10 minutes and a 1-minute warning from us. So Pauline, please push them in their groups when you are ready.
Great.
Thank you so much and have fun. All right, cool.